Good afternoon, everyone. Let's try one more time. Good afternoon, everyone. Hey, thank you. I hope you guys are enjoying the conference, and you're looking forward to the party tonight. So in this session, we're going to talk about new cloud-based disaster recovery capabilities in Azure Site Recovery. I'm your host, Rochak Mittal. I'm the program lead for Azure Site Recovery, and I will be joined by Sujay later in the session, who will talk about a lot of demos and new capabilities in Site Recovery. Before I start, a little fact about myself. My parents thought putting my name as Rochak, which in my language means interesting, will make me interesting. So I have a lot of pressure to keep this session interesting for you. I hope the demos will really excite you what it brings. In this session, we have three objectives. The first and the most important objective is to make sure that you guys take back that building a resilient application on any cloud platform, public or private, is a shared responsibility between the platform provider as well as the application author and the IT admins. Later, we're going to talk about Azure Site Recovery, which is one of the platform services provided by Microsoft, and help you understand how Azure Site Recovery has been helping building disaster recovery solutions in Azure, as well as on hybrid environments, providing you best-in-class RPO, RTOs. Last but not the least, we will share the learnings from our customers, the large-scale deployments, what we have been seeing and deploying as Microsoft, that can help you increase your scale and use Azure Site Recovery in a more effective manner. Let's look at the screen. What does the word outage or a thunderstorm or a natural calamity puts to you? Most of the IT admins and application owners, when I talk to, they get worried about the word outage. It actually puts the business at risk, which means revenue loss, even the loss to our jobs. But still, each of us thinks about outage as natural disasters. I'll share a little bit of data around how these disasters or outages have been. The topmost outage, even today, is our system failures. It's the errors we have done in our infrastructure. It's the errors which we have done in our application authoring or how we have deployed this application. Then comes the issues with our power and infrastructure, which causes these outages. Then is the natural disasters or any calamities like floods, hurricanes, thunderstorms. And last but not the least are the cyber attacks. These have been increasing in the past few years. Malicious users, ransomwares, worms coming and trying to impact our services. It is our responsibility to make sure our applications and our business is protected against all of these outages. And how do we do that? As I was sharing earlier, that building a resilient application is a shared responsibility. Let's look at this graphics. If you read it from left to right, you will see how the ownership of resiliency or building a resilient applications changes. On the leftmost side, you can see the infrastructure, data layer, virtualization layer, and application layer is owned by a single owner. This is what the traditional IT used to do. And it was responsibility of a traditionally IT admin or a single company to build the resilient application, and we were thinking holistically about it. But as we moved from left to right, the ownership has been changing. And when we adopt the cloud without understanding the differences between these, we think the cloud is by default providing us the complete resiliency, which is not true. If you see infrastructure as a service, the infrastructure provider is providing you resiliency on a hardware layer, on a virtualization layer, on the operating system layer. Any layer above that is created, managed, and orchestrated by the application owners and IT admins. And hence, it's the responsibility of them to build the resilient foundations and applications on that. As we move further on the PaaS and SaaS platform, we move on taking the responsibility as the cloud providers and help you build the resilient application To the rightmost, you can see that the SaaS provider is the one who will take care of the end-to-end application, and you are just working as the user. The drawback of moving from left to right is the ownership which you lose, or the control you have, or the customization you can do on these services reduces. So based on our business needs, we can be from any spectrum and needs to think about resiliency in those terms. Now for this presentation, we will focus mostly on the IaaS infrastructure. And if you see from a Microsoft Azure perspective, we provide you the best resilient foundation. My team continuously work to build the resilient foundation, taking it from 4 nines to 5 nines to 6 nines. We have machine learning, AI, predictive analysis, live migration, and various technologies which we put into our data centers to make sure that fundamentally the hardware and the operating system stacks are resilient. Your virtual machines and your application which are leveraging that remain resilient. On top of that, Microsoft has this unique resilient services, and we are the first cloud provider who has invested in these kind of services like Azure Backup, Azure Site Recovery, SQL Replication, which allows you a platform set of capabilities which will allow you to build applications which are resilient. But on top of that is your application which is sitting. If you are not using these capabilities, then you are not building the resilient application. It becomes your responsibility to understand these capabilities, think through what are the resiliency needs, faults you want to be protected against, and build application accordingly. Moving on, if you look at this graphics, you can see from left to right, you have a single VM moving into an availability sets across hardware, moving to zones, which is across data centers, to moving to regions, which is across regions. And Microsoft provide you best-in-class availability for all of these by using premium storage, by using availability sets, availability zones, as well as region replication technologies like ASR and GRS. This whole spectrum allows you to think about your failures and the need of your resiliency. On the data side, there could be other failures like accidental data loss, data corruption, ransomware, and a service like Azure Backup allows you to be protected against it. So if you look at this graphics, you will see that there are various resilient foundations which can be leveraged here. Now, the challenge on the second and the third one you would see is you need to have application which can run active-active. And many of our stateful application is not being able to leverage the benefit of it. That's where the site recovery starts coming in, and we provided you the first capability around region-to-region replication, allowing you to build the disaster recovery capability. And today, I'm going to show you a new capability which will allow stateful application to leverage zones. We are launching a technical preview. You can sign up for that. There's a link around it, which will help you use the zones and build a resilient application across zones and build a good disaster recovery solution. So let's get into the demo. As you can see, I have a virtual machine which is hosted on an availability zone, zone 3, running in the East US2 environment. If you have been familiar with disaster recovery, you can go to a disaster recovery tab, and in preview now you will be able to see a new capability showing up, which is, do you want disaster recovery between zones? By default, it's regional, and you see that we have been replicating or choosing to replicate between East US to West US. But when I choose this capability around availability zones, it defaults my region to East US and allows me to move forward. On the next page of advanced settings, now I can see availability zones as an option, and I can choose the other availability zones as the target, allowing me to recover my application in a zone failure cases into another region. It's just not this. The main benefit of these capabilities are that I can leverage the same network infrastructure which was deployed on the zone. I can use the same virtual network, I can use the same network security group, same ILBs, and not worry about the network planning for the disaster recovery side and reduce my RTO and connection problems to a significant extent. As I select per region, All the things are available by default. And to start the replication, all I need to do is click Start Replication. This will replicate in the background, but let's go back to the presentation and see what benefits are we getting from this. So what we really saw, that now your stateful application can leverage the benefit of zones, get a best-in-class RPO, you can leverage the network benefits and build a simplified network architecture, as well as you're now capable of doing partial failovers because your network is already stretched between these zones without any additional capabilities. So this is a great capability which we are right now in preview and bringing out GA very soon. I would really encourage you guys to use this. This is being powered by Azure Site Recovery, which is the complete disaster recovery solutions for your hybrid and Azure environment, providing you a single glass of pane. This service has been in production for more than 5 years, with thousands of customers deploying at enterprise scale. With that, I would like to call Sujay on stage, who's going to walk you through what does it mean to implement ASR at scale at enterprise grade, and what are the best practices to use. Over to you, Sujay.
Thanks, Rochak. Hello, everyone. Azure to Azure disaster recovery scenario has been generally available for the last 18 months, and thousands of our customers are using it to protect their business-critical applications running on Azure virtual machines. And over the last 1 year, we have learned a lot from those deployments, what challenges customers face, what best practices they follow. And today, I'm going to talk about some of the best practices that you or your customers can follow while implementing disaster recovery at your enterprises. The 3 key things that stand out when you talk about implementing disaster recovery at a scale in an enterprise are, first, security. In today's world, it's very important to have mission-critical applications to be both secure as well as have disaster recovery for compliance. The second aspect is around networking. Networking is one of the complex aspects when it comes to planning disaster recovery between any 2 sites. The third aspect is around how do you manage day-to-day the disaster recovery aspects. How do you monitor, how do you perform DR drills and aspects. Let me go in depth about each of these topics. The first one, security. Azure offers the most comprehensive security tools to make your applications resilient. One such capability is Azure Disk Encryption that lets you encrypt disks that are attached to the VM, and this methodology uses BitLocker for Windows VMs and DMCrypt for Linux VMs. This ensures that any data that is leaving your machine is always encrypted and no one has access to any of that. Azure Site Recovery has been supporting ADE-enabled Windows VMs for the last few months, and today we are going to announce support for disaster recovery of Linux-based Azure Disk Encryption VMs. Let me show you a quick demo of how simple it is to do disaster recovery for Linux VMs. I have a Ubuntu VM that is running in East US and currently being already configured for disaster recovery to Central US. And I'm going to invoke a test failover, which simulates a DR drill and brings up the VM in Central US. It's very simple to invoke the DR drill. You just click test failover button. Within a few seconds, I'll be able to click OK. Yep. Once you click OK, the disaster recovery drill process starts, and the VM will be up in the DR region within 3 to 4 minutes. We'll come back to that. In the meanwhile, I'm going to show you how you can easily enable replication for ADE Linux VMs with ease. I have a VM that is currently running Linux Ubuntu 18.04. And to configure disaster recovery for this, I just go to the disaster recovery option in the left nav, click on that. And you pick the target region of your choice. I'm going to default it to West US. As you can see, what ASR does is read the entire source configuration and create everything in the target region automatically for you. Since this machine has been Azure disk encryption enabled, you see the encryption related properties show up here, the BitLocker encryption key vault and the key encryption key vault. Again, ASR automatically creates the key vaults in the target region as well as copy the keys for you. One of the scenarios that come here is in a lot of enterprises, the disaster recovery administrator and the security administrator are isolated. That means not everyone has sufficient privileges to copy the keys. To solve that problem, we have a simplified PowerShell tool that you can hand it over to your security admins and ask them to copy the keys from source to target region for these machines. That way, you don't have to get access to copy the keys. Once the keys are copied, you can come back to this portal view, and ASR automatically picks up the keys that were copied earlier and configures disaster recovery for you. The rest of the configuration remains exactly same as any other ASR scenario. You just review the settings and then click Start Replication, and within a few minutes, the initial replication process will start. The other important aspect about encryption scenarios is the key rollover. Again, a lot of enterprises have standard policies around rolling over your keys every 6 months or 1 year. What happens when such rollover happens for your keys in the source region? What happens to my disaster recovery configuration? Will it get impacted? Will I be able to do failover? For that, we have made it simple by automating the detection of rollover of the keys in the source region. And today I'm going to demonstrate how that happens. This is a VM that has been already configured for disaster recovery, and in the source region, the keys were rolled over. Then you see a configuration issue that pops up in the Azure Site Recovery portal dashboard. And when you click on that, let me show what it says. You can read the message that, hey, there is a mismatch in the encryption information. Your keys have been changed, rolled over, one of the keys or secrets. So what you can do is, you can immediately go to the virtual machine properties in ASR. And because the keys have been changed, you just need to click Save here. And we copy the latest keys from the source region to the target region in the user context. That way, whenever the key rollover happens, you get a notification and you can take an immediate corrective action. So the key capabilities that are offered for disaster recovery support for Linux VMs, ASR automatically copies the keys to the target region, and there is no additional configuration required for your machine to be failed over. And the machines come up in the DR region within a few minutes. Earlier, I did a demo. At the start of the demo, I launched test failover for one of the VMs. Let's see how that process is happening. You can see that the test failover operation that I started initially, it's already completed and the machine came up. And you can also see that it took about 3.5 minutes. That's all it takes for your machine to be failed over and brought up in the other region. So for AD-enabled Linux VMs, we offer RTO of minutes, and we also offer auto monitoring of key rollover in the source region, and then the corrective action for the same. The second aspect that I want to talk about today is networking. Networking is one of the most complex aspects to plan when you're implementing disaster recovery at scale for a lot of your VMs. And in fact, for the last 4 days at our booth at the hub, more than 70% of the queries are around networking challenges. How do I plan my networking aspects? So the most common challenges that we keep hearing from our customers are, how do I configure the auxiliary networking configurations such as NSGs, ILBs, public IPs, etc. in the DR region? How do I retain my IP from source region to target region? And when I want to do a DR drill, I want to do it into different isolated virtual networks for multiple applications. How do I achieve that? I'm going to demonstrate how these challenges can be tackled with the capabilities offered by Azure Site Recovery. I have a virtual machine that has been already replicating from East US2 to West US. And as you can see here in the compute and network properties of the replicated machine, you can pick a test failover network for your virtual machine, any of the virtual networks that are available. This is how you can pick different test failover network for different of your VMs. And this is one of the latest features that we rolled out just last week. This will help ease your test failovers. And then comes the networking configuration. How do I configure my NSGs, ILBs, all that? It's pretty simple to configure. When you open the network interface properties section, here you can see all the source settings, what are the corresponding test failover settings and the failover settings. I'm going to take an example of how you set a public IP. This is how you can pre-create a public IP in the DR region and use that as the target configuration in ASR. So when ASR fails over and brings up the machine, it automatically attaches that public IP. So you can use this public IP configuration in your, say, firewall appliances or any routers where you need beforehand the information of what your target IP is going to be. You can preset and use that. You can configure all other networking configurations such as load balancer, network security group in a similar fashion. The next challenge is around how do I retain my IP. So ASR retains your IP as long as you are maintaining the same address range in your source and target virtual networks. It is guaranteed that you'll get the same IP in the target region as well. In case if you want to reserve an IP beforehand, the internal private IP for the virtual machine, you can easily do that by just keying in the IP that you want from the subnet range and click save. So once you hit save, all the entire network configuration is saved, and that will be used during the failovers or test failover process. When enterprises start scaling up their production applications on Azure, one of the important challenges they have is around how do they plan their network design in such a way that they can do isolated application failovers without impacting all of their production applications. Today, I'm going to talk about how you can scale, how you can plan the network design. It's very important to have a scalable network design both in source region as well as the disaster recovery region to achieve this. And I'm going to take the example of one of our top customers who has thousands of VMs being replicated for disaster recovery scenario, and how do they plan their network in both source and target regions. So in the source region, they have a hub VNet where all their common shared infra components such as AD, DNS, etc. are placed. And for each application, they have a separate VNet, a spoke VNet. So in this case, one sample example where they have all their app tier, web tier, and data tier in a spoke VNet. How did this customer go about planning the disaster recovery network configuration? First, they create a hub VNet similar to the source hub VNet, and then they place all the standard shared components such as AD, DNS, and then they use SQL always on replication for their data tier replication, and ASR for all their app tier and middle tier VMs. So they place the SQL always on target VM in one spoke, and the ASR replicating machines that particular VNet as a separate spoke in DR region. How do they go about doing the failover activity? First, they initiate the failover of SQL always on and make the secondary database the active one, and then they disconnect the spokes to the hub connectivity in the source region to ensure that there are no conflict when the machines are failed over and come up in the target region. Then once the connectivity is broken between hub and spoke and source, then they invoke ASR failover for the app tier and middle tier VMs, and those VMs land up in the different spoke in the DR region. Once this whole failover process is complete for both data tier, app tier, and middle tier, all the VMs, they just connect the spokes in the DR region to the hub DR VNet. This way, they can do isolated application failover without actually impacting any other applications which are still running in your source region. To summarize, the networking best practices to follow are always pre-plan your disaster recovery network configuration and then use it and preset it in ASR. And for IP retention, if possible, follow the same IP address range in the target virtual network. If not, and if you want to reserve a static IP, you can always key in an IP beforehand and save it again in the ASR properties. And to failover and do DR drill into multiple different VNets for different applications, you can preset a test failover network in ASR properties, and you can follow the hub and spoke model to do isolated application failover. The last area that I want to focus today is how do you manage disaster recovery for thousands of your machines on a day-to-day basis. The first thing that comes to mind is around how do I monitor that everything is going fine, and if there are any issues, how do I troubleshoot. Then ASR releases monthly updates, and when you have enabled ASR on thousands of your machine, how do you manage and ensure that the updates are easily made available for all the VMs? Last but not the least, the capacity planning. How do we ensure that there is enough capacity for your failover machines to work? How can you ensure you have quotas and things like that for the entire failover for all of your VMs to work seamlessly? I'm going to dig deep into these and show some of the capabilities that ASR makes available to you so that we make your day-to-day management of day-to-day management at scale very easy for you. I'm going to start off with a demo of highlighting the ASR monitoring capabilities. This is the centralized monitoring dashboard ASR offers, the Recovery Services Vault view. Recovery Services Vault is the metadata store for all ASR objects. Here you can see all the VMs that are being replicated. What is the summary? Are they green? Are there any issues? If there are any issues, you see the errors as well right away here. You can see if there are any issues with the recent replication process, are there any delays. Then you can click on any of that error message. And it has a detailed error message of what are all the possible causes, and you can, in this case, the app consistent recovery point has not been available for more than 500 minutes. So all the possible causes are detailed, and you can take the remediation by following the recommended actions. Then you have the summary of failover readiness. It's very important to do disaster recovery drills periodically, once at least every quarter, to ensure everything is working fine. So this is a summary of what is your failover readiness, how the test failover status, and you can view for what VMs you haven't performed recent test failures and take corrective actions. I have a different recovery services vault where I have a scenario where the target region does not have sufficient quota for me. So we have the configuration issues view that tells you if there are any potential target configuration issues that can make your failovers not work properly. So when you click the subscription quota insufficient notification that comes up automatically for you, this has the details of what is the current quota, and you can read that. You can easily contact support to get the quota required for specific family size, and then make it green, and your failover will work seamlessly. And if I have any missing configurations, for example, by mistake you deleted a virtual network in the source region, in the target region, how do we alert you? We show you a target configuration. As you can see, for a specific VM, it says needs attention, and when you click on that, there is a detailed error message that talks about, hey, the virtual network is no more available, either recreate or use a different virtual network. The next aspect is around update management. How can you easily ensure that the latest released ASR updates reaches all your virtual machines? For that, we have a new capability called auto update settings. Once you configure auto update settings for your recovery services vault, whenever ASR releases any new monthly update, it is applied to all your virtual machines within 24 hours. To demonstrate that, in this particular vault, I do not have auto update enabled, so we warn you that, hey, there is no auto update enabled on this for this vault. All you have to do is just click on this extension update not enabled, and you have the option to let site recovery automatically manage updates for all your machines. All you have to do is just click on and save this, and from now on, any new update released by Azure Site Recovery is automatically pushed to all your Azure VMs. One of the common queries we get from a lot of our customers is, how do we ensure that there is enough capacity in the target region for all failovers to work? If there are thousands of customers protecting machines from, say, East US to West US, and if something really happens in East US and a lot of them start simultaneous failures, do you guys have enough capacity? So we actually work very closely with Azure capacity management team to ensure there is enough capacity for all ASR protected machines to be failed over, and we always have buffer to cater to your future needs as well. To summarize, the best practices around managing ASR at scale are, you have to continuously monitor your replication health. We have a nice monitoring dashboard that alerts you for any issues. You can refer to that and take a corrective action immediately. Always ensure you monitor for any target configuration issues and take, again, any remediation actions then and there itself. And always configure auto updates for all your recovery services vaults. To reiterate some of the key capabilities that are offered by Azure Site Recovery for Azure virtual machines, we offer automated protection and replication, and the replication is continuous log-based. which ensures that we can offer best-in-class RPO and RTO numbers for your business-critical applications. And we have the test failover capability, which you can use to do disaster recovery drills as many times as you want for your machines without impacting production applications or ongoing replication. And we made it very simple to configure disaster recovery network for you. And we have the powerful capability of recovery plans that lets you orchestrate the failover of the entire application with a single click. And we have, as I shown in the demo, we have centralized monitoring and alerting capabilities that makes your day-to-day management very easy. And last but not the least, you can go to a target region and come back with the same ease. We offer seamless failover and failback for disaster recovery protected virtual machines. With this, I'll hand over the stage back to Rochek to talk about disaster recovery using Azure Site Recovery for hybrid environments.
Thanks, Sujay. Hello. Thank you, Sujay. I hope you guys got an idea how to scale ASR, what capabilities are available to scale ASR, and how can you deploy ASR as an enterprise scale. Over the years, we are seeing the adoption of ASR going into thousands of VMs, thousands of customers using it, and leveraging these best practices will help you increase your adoption with ease. Now, as Sujay talked about a lot about Azure virtual machines, how do you protect them? But in this world, hybrid environments are still there. We will always going to be in a hybrid environment, and Azure Site Recovery continues to invest and innovate in the hybrid design as well. For example, we recently added support for Azure Stack and Azure Stack devices to be able to replicate into Azure. Now on the hybrid side, you can actually support VMware, Hyper-V, physical, as well as Azure Stack to build a disaster recovery solutions. As a company which believes in hybrid design, Azure Site Recovery is going to continue to invest in hybrid technologies and give you a single glass of plane for all your disaster recovery solutions. We were the first ones to innovate in this space. We were the first ones who brought public cloud as a DR site. And our growth graph clearly showcases how the adoption has been increasing, and it's going on increasing at a very fast rate. All the customers who are looking for a single disaster recovery solutions across their varied cloud are coming and adopting ASR. With that, today I'm going to announce some of the new capabilities which are available on our hybrid environment. The first one is Generation 2 support. UEFI support or Generation 2 support has become industry standard. And on Azure side, we have been working for past couple of years to make all our data centers compliant with Generation 2, and we brought native support in Azure for that. Today, I'm announcing support for disaster recovery of UEFI machines to Azure. This allows you to replicate and retain your Generation 2 into Azure. Let's quickly take a look. How does that look? My machine is welcoming back. So this is a UEFI machine which has been protected by me. And if you see, the kind of RPO which has been achieved on this machine is about 29 seconds. So you are now replicating a UEFI machine into Azure with simple clicks, what we have seen in the past, and getting an RPO of 29 seconds. How Sujay has shown the test failover, I've already completed a test failover on this machine, and in interest of time, I will just go and showcase you how this has performed. A UEFI machine which has been booted up and test failover into Azure in about 6 to 7 minutes and up and running. Let's go and look at in Azure, how does that machine looks like. So this is the test failover machine which is up and running in my Azure environment. And if I go to properties, and look at the VM generation, you can see this generation is V2. Now you can see that Azure Site Recovery has enabled UEFI boot machines and brought it completely at par for all your disaster recovery solutions. This capability is just not available for your hybrid environment, but also available for your Azure environment. That means if you are deploying an UEFI machine on Azure, you can get the same disaster recovery capabilities on Azure as well. So what we saw, that it's simple to protect and failover for UEFI machines now. You get RTO in minutes and RPOs in seconds for these machines. And failover, failback is very easy for these machines. The second part of innovation, and which is one of the complex part for any hybrid environment, is how do I manage my hybrid environment? It's very easy for us, even for Microsoft, to say, hey, I have an Azure environment. We understand end-to-end. It's fully in my control, and I can monitor it. But as a customer, when you do in a hybrid environment where some of the infrastructure components sitting on-premise, is it easy for you guys to maintain? And we have been constantly innovating in this space. So the three topmost challenges which we hear on the hybrid side, what is my hybrid infrastructure health? If my infrastructure is having an issue, can you ensure that I don't go on a route which will fail in the future? And as well as, can I do a custom monitoring across my hybrid infrastructure? So let me showcase some of the demos in this space. I'm going back to my demo machine. I'm not going to spend the time on the dashboard, but it's the same dashboard which we saw and Sujay showcased us. The key thing to showcase here is the infrastructure view. Now, if you have a complex infrastructure for your hybrid environment, you can see that complete view in Azure Site Recovery and also look into if there are any issues happening. And just clicking on that particular issue, you can actually find out what has happened to that infrastructure and what needs to be done. The other aspect is the alerting aspect. All of these infrastructure issues are also created as events and alerts. You can get the notification and email notification to you, so you don't need to constantly come and review these environments. To showcase the third aspect, which I was talking about, how do I ensure that I'm not going on a path which will lead to a failure? Here is a case where my on-premise infrastructure no longer has capacity to scale up, but I'm still wanting to scale up. So I'm going to do on-premise to Azure replication. I'm using my demo environment, and I have a process server which is not healthy. And if I try to choose it, it's going to provide me overall health and not allow me to take further actions. Whereas if I do a process server which is healthy, I can do the same action. So what we are doing on a constant basis, we are reviewing the health of your on-premise infrastructure, we are reviewing the scale capabilities of that infrastructure, and helping you ensure that you don't go on a path which will lead to failure. Moving on, I'm going to go to the third demo, which is around, can I build custom dashboards? Can I build custom monitoring for my infrastructure? We are happy to announce that we have a tight integration with Azure Monitors. We have published all the monitor queries which can allow you to see your replication health, your churn patterns, or any other Azure Site Recovery health issues into a single dashboard on Azure Monitor. What you are seeing out here is one of the common issues where the churn patterns are not supported by ASR and you're not able to understand what's happening. This particular query, which I have run, now showcases the upload rate and data churn. If you see, most of the time, my VM is churning and ASR is able to keep up with it, except for the spike, which was a short period. In these cases where the spike has been short period, we can easily manage it. But if this spike runs for a longer period of time, you may see your RPOs being fall behind. But with this monitor view, now you can understand the end-to-end scenario and understand what is happening. With that time window, now you can go and debug your issues. All of these queries are well documented and available on Azure for your reference. With this, I showcase you how to monitor your environment, how you can help us scale, and how do you build a custom dashboard. These were some of the enhancements which we showcased you, but this is not just the innovation we are doing. There are more innovations coming your way. We are taking the ability zone scenarios into GA. We will be bringing support for new Azure features like customer managed key, policy integration, and one of the most important things which we keep hearing from the customers is better Linux support. We have working with a Linux partner. There was a theater session where we showcased this. Now we are going to enhance that even further to bring it to less than 15 days and day 0. This is some of the items. This is not complete, but these are some of the active items which we are doing. That's all I have for you today. I'm going to leave you with some of the resources which are going to help you. If you're starting on Azure, I would definitely recommend you to start with a white paper on the resiliency, which allows you to do a fully resilient architecture and understand how to move forward. Thank you for your time. Have a great conference.